Hey, we're live. Thanks for tuning in to another one. It's great to have everybody here as always. Thanks for checking out another stream. This is the 40th week of me doing my side project, turning a website into an OS. Uh, Keeping it impromptu and casual as usual. Feel free to throw some messages in the chat. Put them in the comment section if you happen to miss the live stream. And if you like the video, you like my other videos, please throw me a like. If you want to subscribe, if you want to motivate me, you want to keep track of what's going on, subscribing does that to me because it's like it's kind of cool to see like, oh cool, people are following it, people are interested. Although it's not the only metric anyways, so do it at your own discretion, you know. What else today? Powered by Red Bull again. The blue Red Bull. Crack it open on stage here. Nice. Thank you for tuning into another one. This is my 40th Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific time in a row doing this. Cheers. That's delicious. So, where are we? Let's just jump straight to the code and take a look at what we have so far. I've got a lot for you guys this week. If you look at my episode 40 stream, I've been spending my evenings toiling away on certain little aspects. Actually, I haven't spent a ton of time on it this week, honestly. Most of these are just like in 2 or 3 hours, but I just keep like commit. I do too many commits maybe on these branches because yeah, do I, don't I? I don't know. I do a lot of commits anyways. I like keeping track of the different steps and not just getting a bunch of things committed. It also helps for the streams because that's what we're going to be going through today. So yeah, this is my Windows 10 OS clone. Does quite a few cool things, and today we're going to make it do some more cool things. Constantly adding to it. I think I fixed like 6 or 7 things since the last episode. Keep the notes there of all the different changes. And yeah, I think like 10 things, 10 post-its, and still got plenty to go over here. The ones on the board are I'm hoping to get done in the next short term. Those are the MVP important ones. Oh, these Red Bulls, you know, they're carbonated. I'm not sure if you know that. So let's just jump right into the changes. Let's move on. So first commit of the day. Import Video.js. Yeah, this is a nice little fix. So I'd started working on my own little type here in usage from a video player. But then I've found that Video.js actually has a pretty good type already if I just import the Video.js stuff. So what I've been doing is doing import type. I like to do import type explicitly to say it's just for TypeScript. And then, yeah, I'm doing it here as well. And I just do return type of Video.js, the whole object, basically. And I've put it in the dev dependencies here, so it's not part of the main bundle of dependencies. It's just for types. And yeah, that was the first nice one. It's great when you can get rid of code and actually improve the code, because now I still have these same types, but they're actually more accurate now because they're coming right from the library. So let's do this first one. I'm going to be lazy and just do patches today, mostly. And what I mean by that is if you go to a GitHub diff file, link and you just end it with .patch, you get a patch file, which you can use Git to apply, which we'll just do right now. So let's open up another terminal in VS Code here. I'm going to make the terminal a little bit bigger. And we're going to do git apply C users / Dustin / desktop / whatever the heck the name of this darn thing is. 65 yada yada. There we go. We'll apply that first one. We'll see here the changes. So as you see here, we got the Video.js type. Actually, we can double check that there's not a newer one there before we commit that. Although I'm going to do an updated check later, but let's just do it anyways. Yarn add the library name -- dev. And we can also do @latest here, but it's not necessary, I think. Anyways, we'll see 7.3.27. Still just 7.3.27, so nothing changed there. Lock file gets updated. So as you see, I got rid of all of my own types and just do a type of the thing. And it was basically exactly equivalent, so nothing else had to change really. For video player, I had to do the return type of the type of. But pretty straightforward for the most part, and it's always nice when you can just use the types from the library instead of making your own. Because otherwise, I'm not. I import it differently. I just use the min files and load the libs when necessary. So I'm not using the entire package for the video player, which is here. Yeah, it's here, the file I was in. So VS Code's complaining about stuff that's wrong, as always. Just VS Code being silly. I might, once that gets annoying, we'll just close VS Code and open it again. I haven't found a good way to properly restart that and have it pick up that. But I have some fights with it still. In general, it's been pretty quick today, recently though, some of the latest updates. So next up, upgrade v86. Yeah. I like to upgrade the library sometimes just to get their latest fixes. So this v86 is where I get my x86 emulator library from. And I downloaded their latest release. Let's just see if they've changed it. 9 days ago. Yeah, that's the one. So yeah, I just got these 9 days ago. It was just this wasm file and the libv86 file. This one and this one. Let's just get them from here. That's all it was. There we go. So I've downloaded those. I'm going to jump back to the code here. Where do I want to put these? I want to put them in public, program files, virtual 86. I'm going to open that in my Explorer, and I'm just going to paste the newest files in. Replace, replace. Now you'll see them changed here, like so. And there we go. We upgraded that library. We could test it, but it's the same tests I've already done, so we'll just assume it's good. Yeah, let's commit that. Oh, darn it. I already did a commit and I didn't put it here. I have to put the commits here. Well, I don't have to, but I like to. So let's make sure we're updating our show notes here. So the first one was the import Video.js types, and now we just did the upgrade with v86. We'll commit those. There we go. I've been keeping up with these show notes pretty well, so I think one day in the 20 years from now, maybe I'll look back at them and remember all these episodes. I mean, like, I've done 40 of them already, so they've been fun. Remove unused exports. Yeah, I think I did some linting script to find some exports I was doing that just weren't necessary. But they weren't necessarily picked. I didn't use them as or why didn't I notice these before? I think it was some rule that's really strict. So I turned it on, found the ones that were relevant, and then I turned it off. So it's just showing here the exports. Again, I'm just going to apply a patch. Pretty much nothing of relevance changed here. It's just that I'm making... Oh, darn it. Sorry, everyone. I didn't... Let me save the patch. I didn't realize I didn't switch to the browser. I was just showing, this is the change here. Removed unused exports. And it's pretty much just, there were some things I was exporting that didn't need to be exported. This is being used internally now. So are all these. I think at one point they were exported and then things got moved around and then they don't need to be. The consumer here, I was never using the consumer for the file system or the menu. Yeah, and the other ones were just things I'm using internally, like load script and load style are both being ran by the load files command, and that one's exported. So let's switch back here and run another git apply. Here it is. This time on that other commit. Remove unused exports. Yeah, very simple stuff. So we'll just trust these. I've already vetted these, so to speak, but they're pretty simple. It's nice maintenance to do, you know. I mean, if you don't need them, it's not something you need to export. I don't think there's any performance improvement by doing that or anything, but it's just like having types, you know. It just makes things clearer. This does not need to be exported, you know. By not putting export, it's clear that it doesn't need to be exported. Package upgrades. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's just get it out of the way. I think it's painless enough this time. So we're going to do yarn outdated and see what it is that we don't have right now. Have a sip of my Red Bull. So some of these are just types. You see the dev dependency ones. But the ones that matter, Next.js got an update here to a new version of Canary. Everything else is a dev dependency. So what we're going to do, something I've noticed recently, is if I do yarn upgrade -- latest and I run this, it'll actually undo some of my Canary changes. It'll go from Next.js 11.2 or 11. what was I on? Let me double check here. Let me go to files changed. Oh, this is a weird console output. Weird in a useless kind of way. Ugh. I'm gonna adjust my chair here so I'm not all over the place. So yeah, let's see this change. Yeah, you see I had Next.js 11.13 at a canary version, which is like a beta alpha type of thing. And it jumped me back to 2. I think that might be the -- latest thing, but if I don't do -- latest, it doesn't even upgrade, or it doesn't update the package.json file for me, so whatever. Anyways, we'll just go over it here again and redo a few of these. So I'm going to say next at canary, and we'll do that one. And then there's a few other ones. All the next stuff has to be upgraded to canary. Otherwise, it starts to give me some problems. So we'll say this one at canary, and what were the other next is? This one as well. Yeah, that should be at canary. I think that was it. Just want to double check. I have a feeling this testing library was supposed to be switched. Let's double check that in the file that I changed here. No. So the only canaries were the next file, the other next file, and the next file, yeah. For some reason, I thought this had to change. Let's finish the update and then do a lint just to be sure. So it should be just these other two things. And then the way that I usually test to make sure I haven't broke anything is to just kind of, ESLint. Run like a yarn ESLint and a few other things just to test it. But in general, yeah, this is just type updating. This is the testing library. That's a useful update. I think in a few commits from now, I maybe change something in the testing library. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, where I had to change something else to a beta or an alpha or something. Okay, the linting's passing. Another one I like to do is yarn build. That kind of tests all the TypeScript stuff as well. And yeah, as it says here, checking validity of types. I wish, bumped my head on the microphone there. I wish there was just a way to run the command just to do checking validity of types. I'm not sure if there is. Because there's TS, I think there might be, honestly, like some tsc.exe argument flags that could target exactly what I want, but it's not a simple command, I don't think. Be cool if it was. All right, well, this is building. I think we'll just commit this because I'm okay with this. Let's just, while we're waiting for this to scan, let's just jump to whatever the next one's going to be. I've already got that one queued up. So that was all I did on the 26th. On the 27th, so this is a little contentious for me. So system shortcuts. This commit I completely changed further down recently. Here I redid system shortcuts to be done a different way. But I'm debating if I want to commit this one just to kind of show the thinking process and show, like, first I tried it this way and there were these negative things, so I switched it. Maybe we'll do it that way because it's just applying patches, so it's not super hard to do. So let's switch back to the code. So it built as well. I'm going to commit this as the package upgrades. We're going to close this existing session and start a new one here for yarn dev. Because when you upgrade Next.js, it usually needs to restart. So there was our package upgrades. Let's go to look at these system shortcuts and see how it is. Yeah, because I changed things, I added things. I like the basics of it. I like what it got me, but then I'll show you some of the not so good parts, and I think we'll apply it a little bit later in one of the future commits. Okay, so it's booted up now. If I refresh, this should be back to working. Okay, yeah, so nothing's broken yet. So one system shortcut I want is like my PC. I don't want it to show a shortcut icon, and I want it to be put at the top. So my idea is that I want to have a few shortcuts that are almost considered like system shortcuts that are treated a little differently. They're top of the sorting priority. They're not shown as shortcuts with the arrow. So that's the idea of system shortcuts. I'm just going to apply the patch, and we're just going to go over the changes rather than look at them in GitHub. So it's git apply. Again, I have to type, oh no, the wrong command. Dun dun dun. So it's E99. There we go. Let me just copy the words to the name, that message of the change. We'll close this to get it out of the way. So the first thing is I added a git ignore I've also added one other system shortcut called public. I actually don't use it personally on my home computer, the public directory. I pretty much just dump everything on the desktop. But I think for when a user visiting my website or something, and just for convenience sake, it's nice to have that user folder on the desktop. And in this case, I'm considering the user that's logged in to be called public. So there's a public folder, and this is going to be a shortcut to that folder. That's the file right there. So it just opens users public. That folder already existed. I've got the user icon, which is this icon here, and that's the small version of it. And yeah, so first thing is I moved the file manager into the desktop. I think that made more sense. Before it was here right in the root of the Next.js pages, but now it's just like desktop, taskbar, app loader. And the file manager here, I realized that this file manager is pretty much the same, is like part of the desktop, because it even is talking about the desktop here. So I thought, maybe that should just live in the desktop, make this a little more simple anyways. So I moved it in there, and then I've added this thing called system shortcut. But the reason that I don't like this, there's several reasons, but one is that I have to make like a list of shortcuts. This is separate from the files. I'd rather the shortcut itself have the moniker that it's a system special shortcut, instead of a file manager having to go, oh yeah, I have special shortcuts in me. Another big downfall of this one that I didn't think about until it was already committed was that if you rename the shortcut, like my PCs or my computer, it totally stopped being a system shortcut. It would get the shortcut icon back. It no longer had the same sorting order. It was just a mess. So it's not ideal long term. But here's what I was thinking anyway. So that's how I did it first. I had a list of them, 2 of them here. Some of this I keep because some of it's useful. This one here, let's go to the first one here. So from here, I pass in system shortcuts. Here's the file manager part where it gets it. So this part I eventually get rid of, and I don't pass it into the file manager. But what I do is I get it in the stats of every file. Because you see here in the file manager, this hook right here, use folder, these files, they know they're in the right sorted order, and they have stats in them that can say, hey, this is a system shortcut. So later on, that's how I end up doing it. But here I just passed it in as a list. I moved this up to here because I kind of refactored this. Not much of it really changed. Basically just this object keys piece here. I put that up top here. Why did I though? Oh, right, because I needed to use it twice here. Yeah, here's another piece I didn't like. To get the system shortcuts at the top of the list, I did like the list of the system shortcuts, but not the file names, and the file names, but not the things that are the system shortcuts, to kind of like reorganize. That also looked a bit hacky, but anyways, here's how it is now. Further in the episode, like an hour from now when we get to that commit. Do I want to wait that long, or should I just change it? The concern I have with changing it is it might mess up other patches. So I think we'll walk this path together. This is an approach. Simple enough though, what it does. It's nothing too fancy. And then yeah, the file entry, this part I'm going to keep. So on the per file entry basis, actually I'm not going to keep this part in the long term, but the stats are already passed. So the stats are just going to know. So this won't be passed in. The stats are known already. I'll just be like stats.system shortcut, but for now we're doing it this way, and then that's it. So everything's in the right spot at least. So now we'll see the outcome of that, at least is a nice positive outcome. So there we go. So now the PC's at the top. And if I do a build.fs again, I don't keep the file system in the repo anymore, so I don't get it with the patch. But if I rebuild my file system, I'll get that public file as well. There we go. So you see these are treated as system shortcuts now. And now that one goes to the My PC folder. This one goes to the public folder, which has all of its cool little shortcuts as well. And they have their stuff in them. Like Documents has stuff, has those stream notes, like the notes I'm doing right now. This was last week's notes. And I'm going to keep improving on this text editor IDE, actually. Here's the things from last thing to follow up on. I can copy these into my actual real code editor. So that was the things from last week. So the Video.js things we already did. Folder shortcut is not using. Yeah, I'll fix that shortly. And then system shortcuts we're just doing right now. But at the end of the episode, I'm going to fix it a little bit and make it a little better. So yeah, we've already dealt with all that. Nice. We got system shortcuts. It works. We just tried it. Let's commit that and move on. Let's not dwell on it. Next up, dynamic Monaco. So these here were me fixing in another episode. So a lot of the apps are based on this container component idea, where the library basically says, give me a DOM element to render whatever it is I do. And I've wrapped an app window around that, a process kind of, so that it's like, give me the library, I'll give you a DOM window, and we'll connect them here. And on top of that, I added like a drag and drop support, so you could drop a file onto the window and it would load in whatever the app is. But on a per app basis, I didn't really have it tuned well to just change the URL out of nowhere. So that's what we have to do here. Oh, cheers. I'm gonna chase that with some water. You gotta hydrate, you know? Well, you don't have to, but I prefer to. Okay. So long story short, we're gonna make a lot of these apps dynamic. With Monaco, with the photo app, with JS DOS. More JS DOS there, the v86 one. Pretty much every app that was lacking in the dynamic aspect, we're gonna dynamicify. That's the technical made-up word for it. Dynamicatron, I think, is another made-up technical word for it. None of them accurate, of course. All right, 5B. Apply another patch. I think next week I might shave this. I don't know. I'm getting tired of it. It's too much work. This beard, too itchy. Okay, so let's see here. Monaco, what have we changed? At a distance, it looks like I changed pretty much everything about the way it loads. I think I kind of just reshaped it though. So the left side is how it used to be. It used to just be two use effects. No, it was just one. So there was one effect here. If there was no editor, it would do all of this. So here was the first issue, is that it would only ever even load the URL if there was no editor. So the first time. So the first time it goes through the process and loads the editor, and then it would never do it again, basically. So that was one of the first problems that had to change. And then, yeah, it would do the load Monaco, which would go to this function here, and it would do the loader. That's the part of Monaco that I got from the library here, from Monaco editor React library, the init part, and then it would set the editor here that I had, and it would create a model. And the model would be based on the file that had this content, the value that was being read here, I believe. Contents to string. Yeah, exactly. So, and then here was the dispose and the one effect. It would clean up the models and everything. So I kind of split that into three pieces, I think. Did I? Yeah. So there's this first use effect here that if Monaco doesn't exist, that it loads it up. Yeah, that's like the first thing. So there's no Monaco. That's the new one that I didn't have before. Now I need Monaco and I need editor for the way I'm doing it, because I need to be able to create them more than once. Before here, I was using Monaco and then I just didn't use it again. I never saved it, but I need to be able to reuse it again. So the first time there's no Monaco, then set up the config and initialize, and then set the Monaco instance. So then if this ever runs again, it's never going to run again because Monaco's set now. So that effect has done its thing. Next effect here. So if Monaco exists, but there's no editor, and there is the DOM element to dump it into, we're going to set the editor, create the editor here with that DOM element, and the most basic setup here, just the theme and the layout. And then this is also where some of the disposal is going to happen that was happening before. Gets disposed there, dispose here. The same disposing that was happening before, actually, here. And then there's a third one here, and this one monitors the URLs. So if Monaco exists and the editor exists and the URL exists or changes, by the way, because this is in an effect, anytime any of these change, these two probably won't change, but the URL, let's say, would change, then that's when it reads the file. And if there's no error, then it gets, if there's a model already existing, it cleans it up, and then it sets a new model, basically, which it creates here by having access to Monaco again. Creates a new model, just like how it was creating the model here. And that's it. And it updates the title. So now, if we check it out, it should hopefully be a lot more dynamic. Oh, let's refresh this. There we go. So if we go back to the stream notes, they were actually a good demo of this. Nope, not there. Where are the stream notes? Here we go. So we open a stream note. It's open. And now I take a different one, and I drag it on and drop it. There we go. It loaded. The title changed, and nothing blew up. Nice. And I can close it. I can open it again. Drag a different one on there. Reloads. So there we go. That app works now. Now to the next one. This is something that had to be done on every app, and then going forward, now that I have this ability, every app should be designed this way, but I don't always remember to do it. Lucky thing is, yeah, just when you make one of these container apps with a library, you have to think, what happens when the URL changes, you know? Is it gonna have the ability to redo all of that with the effect, or is the effect locked into, oh, I set the thing that was my initial thing, I'm not gonna look anymore? That was the problem I pretty much had with most of the apps, as you'll see. So let's just do the Monaco one. Dynamic Monaco file loading. It's a nice, simple one in some ways. From it was only one file point of view. Next one here, generalized file drop and fixed for photos. Right, so for the Photos app, I didn't have it. And I've also tweaked the file drop, I think, to allow, not only is it going to be a callback, but it can also be where you just give it an ID and it knows, okay, I'll update the process with that URL, with that ID, with the new URL, sorry, a temporary one, if need be. Okay, let's do it again. The patch. The good old trusty patch. That's how I run these episodes here. That's how I keep it lean. That's how I'm able to do 48 commits in less than 3 hours. That and the fact that I think about them throughout my evenings. All right, generalized file drop. Let's take a peek at it. So let's go to some of the base stuff here. So one of the first things with generalized, and if you remember, I was talking about container components. Here's the container component. And before, I was doing the entire file drop piece here for loading container ones. And I've moved that, I think, into the file drop component. Because this is basically a file drop that was temporarily loading a file. So if, let's say, you took a photo from your desktop, a picture or something, and you drop it directly on the app, it's not in my file system yet, so to speak. So this would actually detect that. And in this case here, it'll make the temp directory and create the folder, create the file that you dropped in, and then load it into the container app. And in this other case here, it'll also, if there's no file data, then you've just dragged something that was already existing on the computer and just dropped it onto the thing. And I'll just update the file directly, the URL. So I've taken that out and I've put it back, I put it in here into the use file drop hook, because it's kind of part of the file drop in a lot of ways. So before, file drop was extremely simple. Now it's got this logic and it's a little more multi-purpose. So before, it would just take taking this one command, which was a callback, but I basically was saying, oh, it's going to be new path every time. That actually wasn't even the case already. I was already using it, I think, in a custom way where new path wasn't really new path. So now it's like callback and ID, and it's both are optional, so it's one or the other. Although at the same time, I was thinking of tweaking this because that doesn't quite make sense. I mean, I guess it's okay because I should know for the code, but I'm just thinking here, does this make any sense if there's no callback and it tries to run this and there was no ID, then this is going to fail in both cases too. So really, I should really check for ID. ID should not be optional. Well, one of them can be optional, but ID should not be preset, I suppose. And then here I'll just check for it. If ID. So if for some reason you didn't pass ID, then this function's not going to do too much of use anyways, but there's no sensible reason why I would have done that. What's error complaining about here? Implicitly has any type? That's probably wrong. Yeah, it's just misreading this here. It's unfortunate that it does that sometimes in VS Code. It's saying here this is an any and that FS is an any, but it knows what the used file system is, so when I hover over FS here, it should not be an any. If I go into it, and now if I go back to here now, it'll smarten up. No. Whatever, doesn't matter, it's wrong. So one day those types will load. We'll close VS Code in a second here because I don't like seeing these little red squiggly lines. Actually, let's do that now. I don't like it saying that it's wrong when I disagree with it. So let's close VS Code, open it back up here, pointing to the new instance of it, rerun my dev environment. And now here, when this loads up, it should smarten up. There we go. Now it knows what all this stuff is. So now it knows what error is, and it knows that I used it correctly. That's better. If I'm going to be refactoring code, I can't have squiggly lines, you know? It's just too much lack of confidence on my part on it. So anyways, this is pretty much doing what it was doing before, but if you don't pass a callback, instead it'll use that function that already existed before in the container component, but now anyone can use it. So that's the idea with file drop. You pass an ID, it's going to use this. You pass a callback, it'll do the other one. So that explains those two pieces. And then this one here, right, before I was just directly passing the new path function. Now I pass it as the callback. And then in the container one, I just pass the ID. So those are the two cases. And then here, what did I change? I added file drop here to styled photos, right? So styled photos isn't a container app. It's an app, but it wasn't a container component app. So it needs to have file drop added to it manually. But now I was able to generalize that ID piece outside of container component. So I can reuse it here as well. And I noticed that, yeah, if I didn't put that this is not closing, yeah, here it was like not source. That wasn't really relevant. The URL part's important. But this was my way of making sure when the URL reloads that it would rerun this. Before, the source was being set here, and then this would never retrigger. So that was, again, another way to make it modular. And let's test that out. Let's go into the... Oh, wait, is the dev thing not running now? Didn't I run it? I did run it. It just needs to request. There we go. So we need to find some pictures. I think I know where some are. Here, pictures. There we go. So there's one. So there's the photo app. And then if I take this and I drag that, boom, there we go. It loads. Now you see here it's acting funky. It keeps stealing focus. That's because the photo app is slightly broken. I have a little red note there to fix that. So I didn't notice it was stealing focus. That's another bug. I wonder if it's related to this probably that I changed. Very well could be. Well, we're not going to deal with that this episode. I've got it written down, so it's noted. For now, we've generalized it. File drop works. That's the focus of this commit. Done. Let's note it. Actually, I'll note in the next stream about that other part of the bug. So photos app keeps stealing focus. Yeah, that's bad. But to debug it this episode is just to waste everyone's time, honestly. I don't know what's wrong at the moment. Probably something simple enough. Let's move on. Load JS-DOS files dynamically. Now, JS-DOS and the v86 have a lot in common. So you'll see a lot of what I do in this commit is pretty much the same as the next commit. And for that reason, I might do it quicker. We'll see. We shall see. Git apply. I got to keep running this every time I close VS Code or close the window I had open, which seems to be a lot with me. There we go. There's another patch applied. This one to the JS-DOS file. Only needed to change one, it looks like. So this part here was happening on destroy. So on destroy, it was trying to save the file. That was the way I have it. So it would always save state. So if you're playing a DOS game or you're doing v86, if you close it, it's going to save where you were. Now I call this close bundle and I moved it up to being a function here. Otherwise, it didn't change very much. I just had to generalize it as a function where I pass the URL and I pass if it's in a closing state. So here on destroy, if closing, I run close bundle. But the other scenario where I run close bundle is when it reads the file, if there's already an existing URL that's loaded. And the way that I detect if there's an existing URL is instead of just setting the CI directly in DOS CI, I've changed it to being this object where it says where the key is the URL and the value is the CI, because they are kind of linked. So like this URL, this file loaded this command interface, this DOS instance. So when I reload a next file, if it sees another one here in that array, in the DOS CI array, which is now, you see that's the other change here. It used to just be the command interface, but now it's a record of a string and the command interface. And it starts as an empty object. Yeah, so if it finds it, it saves it again. So that's how we keep saving it. So if I load another JS-DOS file, and let's test that out too. Let's just keep testing them out. So for that, I need to drag something else on from the desktop. Let me find one of my DOS games. Blakestone, I think that works. So we'll load up Doom here. This is loading in JS-DOS. And then I'll drag on and drop. And there we go. It reloaded and switched to saying B-Stone. The icon didn't change, but that's like a different issue, kind of. And it loaded B-Stone. So now if I go into the Blakestone directory and then bstone.exe or .bat, okay. Let's see if it plays it. This was always a fun game. I really liked Blakestone, actually. I think I played it when I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 or 9. But yeah, that's part of my app, is you can just drag random zip emulators in here and just play them like DOS games if you want. It has a full DOS emulation. And it works, you know? There we go. Oh my gosh, it's not very performant, honestly. Maybe that's how it was before, I don't know. Might be because I have the DevTool window open. Sometimes it plays better, but it's playing pretty chunky right now. How do I shoot? Yeah, whatever. The min-max part's good, but that game played chunky. You know why, actually? That's another aspect of JS-DOS, is that my thing in here's the files, by the way. Oh, that's cool. It loaded the icon. I didn't know it would load the icon. That's fun. And I can drag it onto here. Yeah. That's a fun icon. All right. Either the JS-DOS file. So if I open up this JS-DOS Doom one, it has a .js-DOS folder that has these config files that are somewhat relevant. That's incorrect that shows as empty. That's another thing I have to fix because it was a zip file. It never deletes it. So yeah, like say for Doom here, it says it's Doom, but some of the important stuff, like the DOS box here, it talks about the way that it sets up the CPU, the amount of memory it gives it, and you can fine tune these things to make the gameplay better. And that's where if you go to JS-DOS has this like DOS zone where they fine tune the games. So if I was properly loading a .js-DOS file and not just dumping this zip file in here, then maybe it would have been a different story. Oh, do I not have, oh yeah, there we go. This is not super reliable, that feature, unfortunately. I have the ability to drag and drop now, but darn it if it sucks. Why can't I go above Doom? That's weird. I just can't get this thing to go up there. Ugh. Huh. Yeah, that's a fight. Alright, well that's a bug. Yeah, the drag and drop needs work. I'll make that as an episode note, too. Drag, drop. Wait, moving files via drag is too sensitive. Or too insensitive? I don't know. It's buggy, let's just say. It sucks. Drag sucks, let's say. Doesn't work well. Let's be generous. Okay, where were we on this commit? Load JS-DOS dynamically. Let's just commit that one. It obviously worked. The app still got some bugs, but it worked. Next one, move bundle close function into callback. What? Something here I had wrong. Okay, the close bundle function wasn't quite working correctly. Let's try to double check what it is I changed here, but I think, yeah, I had a follow-up commit because something was a little fishy about that commit, I guess, when it came to saving at the end. That's where the fish part occurred. So we're just going to load yet another patch. So what was I missing here? Oh, I moved this out of here. Oh, okay. I turned this into a callback, close bundle. Why? I don't know why. Move bundle close function into callback. I guess just a basic refactor. I guess there's no reasoning behind it. Yeah, it didn't need to be in the use effect function. That's true. Just declare the whenever it's needed. Or whenever the dependencies update, sorry. Alright, that's a fair refactor. I think it's the same thing I did for the v86 one. Let's take a peek. Let's just jump to it. Here we were. Make v86 dynamic load files. Don't mind if I do. Jump to it here. That's a Simpsons reference, by the way. 787. Paste it in. Let's see if it's just basically the same idea. Yeah, so instead of close bundle, this one's called close disk image. It's the same kind of code that used to be over here in this close. So it used to be when I closed, I would just save the state. But now that's turned into a function called close disk image so that it can be closed on subsequent loads. Same thing here where I switched it from being just the emulator v86 to a record where the string is the currently loaded URL. This is again to do the same kind of simple cleanup. So I get the current URL here. I create a function called load emulator, which basically is the same thing as what this was doing. The difference being whether the disk image is closed first, I think. Yeah, everything else about this function is exactly the same as what used to happen. But then I added this little piece at the end. So if there was a URL, close the disk image, then load the emulator. Otherwise, load the emulator. Wait a minute, am I not doing that with JS-DOS? One of them looks like a promise, kind of. The other one not. That's weird. Let's open this up and see. So here's the JS-DOS one. I say close bundle, which doesn't stop the instance. I only stop the instance here. So I reuse the instance, but maybe with v86 you can't reuse it? Was that my reasoning? How does close disk image work? Yeah, it destroys it every time. So it destroys the previous one. That's what it waits for. Versus this one here. Well, this close bundle, it does. Well, the first thing is here, it runs persist. And then that is a promise. So I'm almost concerned that, I guess I don't, do I clean up any of the other ones? No, not really. I don't clean up any of the old CIs. That's one interesting thing I didn't think about. I do DOS instance stop, but on the DOS CIs, I close the current bundle. Does persist close it? I think that's the thing that I noticed, is when I ran persist, it completely killed the CI. That's like persist for next time, goodbye. Okay, so yeah, it's not quite the same. So for v86, whenever I close it, I do destroy the existing emulator. Which is why I wait for it here, because when I load up emulator again, I have to start a whole new one via this part here, the v86 starter. Okay, let's check it out anyways. That's the only change. So it's basically the same idea as the other one. Let's try it out. Documents, disk images. So we'll open up Calibri in v86. So that's Calibri running. And then we'll take the Linux one and we'll just drag it on and drop it. And there we go. Switch to Linux and loaded the Linux one instead. Nice. And there should be a save state somewhere. Oh, it's over here. Snapshots. Yeah, there's the snapshots for the Doom run, the Calibri one. All of them have save states. So if I were to reopen the Linux, it should be back at that same spot it was. Yeah, which was halfway through loading. Kind of rough on it, but that's okay. You can be abusive to virtual machines, and they'll just take it. Okay. Make v86 dynamic load files. That's another success, I'm going to say. And then here's another little subtle thing. I check, was there already a URL? Here I check if the emulator doesn't exist yet. I might be missing some cleanup stuff there. It's always going to be a battle to optimize the code. If it turns out I could clean that up more efficiently, hopefully I'll find it in the future. At the same time, a lot of this stuff only matters if people run it and then leave it running. Or if or when it doesn't clean up, it like makes a big difference. But a lot of time it doesn't make that much of a difference. Clean any possible models. So here's a little bit of cleanup for Monaco. I'll just paste this change. Go to Monaco, line 40. Here it is here. So what did I change? So instead of just going if editor and Monaco, so I need both. And I don't need this dispose function, right? So instead of just saying get model, I go, hey, Monaco, give me your main editor, and from there get all the models. And then for each model, do the dispose. The reason behind this is sometimes I think it was like it was missing a little bit. or I would go to reload and it would be like there was a model that somehow didn't fully close. This kind of just made sure it goes through and like double checks, like every model's got to close. I think there was, yeah, there's a dispose here that's supposed to be occurring when you first load it, but something about that just wasn't consistent, I guess. Anyways, it doesn't hurt, you know. If you say get models, you want to just give me one model, okay. You want to give me more, I'll work with it. Make VD6 load. Yeah, that was fine. I already did that. So I think we just did all of those too. Clean, make, move, load, generalize. Yeah. Let's move on to recursive deleting folders. Right, this is another cool one. So basically this just adds the ability to recursively delete folders. But at the same time, I think I might have failed here. Yeah, recursive delete fixed. Maybe we can just jump right to that. But also I do copy. We'll do it in steps here. Let's just do the first part of it here. Let's see where I was going with this. And maybe we'll apply that fix if it's something simple. First, let's apply the patch, which in this case is an A6 something or other. Nice, just one file change. So the delete file is actually a promise. And what delete file is doing now, so what it did before is it would check, right. It would look for the file and see if it was a directory. And if it was a directory, it would do remove directory. Otherwise, it would do remove file, which is unlink. That wasn't enough because if the directory was not empty, it was not successful. So what I've changed it to here is, let's just take a look and try to figure out. So at the end of the command, it would always do update folder. So I've turned that into a function here called update current folder that would run the update folder and then resolve the promise at the same time. So that runs at the end in both cases here. So in the first case, if it's, let's ignore the directory case for a second. So in the non-directory case, it's just like before, it does unlink, and then the update, which runs the update folder and then resolves the promise. The difference here is that the directory one, so if it's a directory, it reads the directory and then gets the list of directory items and it runs a promise on all of those, where I take each list entry and I run delete file again recursively on it. So I kind of go through this recursive loop with it, where it joins the directory and then tries to delete that one. And then when all of these promises have been fulfilled, then it does the rmdir on the empty directory and deletes the directory. So that was the basic idea, but let's take a peek at what I fixed, because I remember it didn't quite work as expected, I think, at some point. This looks more complicated than it probably should be, that change. You know what? Let's apply them one at a time, because I can't tell from this silly diff what I did, and I don't want it to get lost. So that was the basic idea. If we take a look here, I think it partially worked. So new folder, and let's put something in the folder. Okay, we refresh, it's still there. New folder, it's got a thing in it. So we right-click the folder, press delete, and refresh. It is gone. It did delete it. But now if we do that again, and we make another folder inside here, and we put something in that folder as well, that I think it had an issue with. So I don't think it was recursive enough. So let's see, new folder, and it's got another folder inside it. So if we do that, I press delete, it's going to disappear, but if I refresh, it went away. What was the problem I had with this? That's why I committed it, you know, because at one point I was like, hey, this does work. Maybe my next change breaks it from working in some other way. Or is it triple nested it doesn't work? That doesn't seem likely. If double worked, you'd think triple worked. The code wasn't that. Okay. Well, let's say, hey, that worked. I mean, in theory then, let's say that worked. And let's just move on to the next commit. And see if the next commit broke it. Because for some reason, I thought that darn thing was broken. So the idea of it sounded reasonable though, right? So it did work. Let's try to go on to the next piece and figure out why it didn't work. So first I did this copy files recursive. So what did I change? What did I break here? Well, I changed something anyways. Let's just take a look at this patch here. So the idea was not only did delete not recursively work, I also couldn't copy recursively properly. And it's possible to make that work. I broke something else, and I didn't realize it until just right now. But let's see. Let's see what I changed. Might be for the better. You never know. So this is called copy files recursive, this change. It's in the same area. So I've also started using this is absolute in this case. The copy file one was a little more complex. Oh, I changed new path, how it works too. Interesting. Actually, there's not a huge amount of changes here. It looks bigger than it is because of the indenting. The main changes here happen with paste to folder. That's the copy recursive piece. I think I pretty much applied this like how the delete one was. But let's just see here. I changed new path slightly, very slightly though. I changed it to a promise. I changed the way isInternal is checked. Before it was just saying if you go directory name and you get dot, which basically means there's no directory. So let's say test.txt. That would, if that on a dir name would just produce a dot. So if it's not that, it would be internal, which means it was an actual path. Now a better way to check there was is absolute. What was the reasoning behind this? I think it comes down to copying folders. Oh, it comes down to making directories, right? So the issue with copying the folder is, so once I have a list of everything I want to copy and I want to make new stuff, it wasn't properly making the nested folders. Because this command works on, before this command used to work on the theory of you're either going to give me a path or you're going to give me a file name. And if you give me a file name, I'm expecting data. And if you give me a path, I'm not expecting data. But the thing is, I want to be able to give relative paths. So it's not going to have a / at the front, but it could be new folder / something else /. And before I wasn't handling that because this dir name thing wasn't working. If there was no /, then the dir name fell apart, kind of trying to search that properly. Where it was internal, but it didn't think it was internal. So I had to change that check. Otherwise, I changed this to a promise so that I could resolve right at the end here when all of this part was done and the rename was done. And I've also put the resolve here when all of this was done. And a reject when it fails. I basically just made this a promise so that it knows when it's done. Before I never knew when it was done. I don't remember why I need this, but I mean, I think it makes sense. Like if I want to make a folder structure, I need to, it's like, wait, I'm making this, then I'm making this, you know, like these things have to happen in order. But nothing else changed otherwise. I just added the resolves and the rejects at the end point in these cases. Could this be? Yeah, no, that makes sense. See this, yeah, here I had to have new path happen here, then resolve. This was to be able to make them in order and not have them all just asynchronously occur. And then here's the other piece of the puzzle, was that the unique name doesn't include that /. So only care about updating the folder, refreshing the folder, focusing, or setting it to rename mode if it's not nested in any way. Because that's just the way it works. If I'm in another folder and I were to try to do a rename or a focus or to update, then this wouldn't occur. But if it's in that folder you're talking about making some other folder a subfolder, that's when you wouldn't want this to happen. It's kind of confusing, honestly, or I've explained it badly. I don't know how that broke the new folder thing or the deleting part. Somehow. And then as far as paste, what changed here? Very little. That's just the word change. So in this directory case here for paste, if it's a move, otherwise this is the copy scenario. Yeah, so it was just reading a file and trying to make a path. So it didn't work at all for folders before. Now, what is the difference now? Okay, now I've made this function called copy files. So I start with a read file like before with the same path, and then I pass it to copy files. So the first thing it does It tries to read it, and then it tries to come in here and do a new path. And there won't be file contents if it's a folder, but the path would still be able to exist as a folder. So let's say it's a folder. It'll make it in our fake directory. This would be empty because it's a folder. Then when it goes in here, that was another piece of why I needed new path to be a promise, is I need to know what the unique path name is. Because if I paste a folder in a place that already has a folder of that name, it's going to give it a new name with like the bracket 1 bracket. But I need to know subsequently for that unique name so that I can make sure to paste in its subfolders of that one. That's why after I make the new path, and if it decides to make a unique name, I need it to tell me, hey, I changed the name you wanted to this. So now the first thing it does is it checks to see if that first thing was a directory. And if it was a directory, it goes further. Otherwise, it's done. Otherwise, it made the file. It was a file. The end. But if it turns out it was a directory, then it reads that directory, gets the contents, loops through it, and does the same thing recursively, copy files, and starts this whole copy file piece over again, which eventually which makes another path, and so on. So that's the basics of that. Let's try that one out. Let's see if that works. So we'll make a new folder. Inside that, we'll make a file. Inside there, we'll make a folder, and inside there, we'll make a file. Close them all, refresh the page, confirm they're in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to right-click and press copy, and then paste. There we go, new folder 1, and inside it, we got our things as expected. So there we go, we got, and now let's try delete again here. So press delete. Oh, that's a bug. I feel like I fixed that, but I don't know. Well, I'm not surprised that that folder didn't delete, but why did it even show that it deleted? I'm not happy with that result. Let's just try to delete this one as a test. Delete, refresh. The delete's working now. Why do I have a thing saying fix delete? I don't know how delete is broken. That's weird. Copy files recursive, so that works now. Maybe that's what that fix delete is the fact that it deleted 2 folders for some reason. Why do I need to fix delete? And why did delete try to delete 2 folders? Let's try to replicate exactly that same scenario and see if the same thing happens. Let's just try it with one file. Copy, paste, and then delete this. That didn't happen, but with a folder it did. I don't know. Maybe that was just a focus thing. So we're going to try to resolve this right now, but let's commit this change we had. Copy files recursive, yeah. I'm happy with that change. It worked. Let's move on to this delete fix and see what the heck that's about. Recursive delete fix. I'm going to apply the patch, but I'm not going to necessarily commit it unless I'm happy with whatever the heck it changed, because other than that weird little delete bug, it seemed like it was deleting successfully. But my feeling was that I needed that patch for successful deletion. And now that just doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm confused. Let's see what I changed here. Not a minor amount. Oh, this is a big difference. So now when I do delete file, I think it might just be a refactor. So when I go delete file, the first thing I try to do is delete the file, unlink. And if unlink fails because it's a directory, then it moves on to the next thing. Whereas before I was checking stats, I guess that was partially a waste of time. Or was it? It's a good question. Well, that's true. I mean, there isn't much to it. You unlink and you resolve. Okay, I don't need to update the folder? Why is that? Where'd my update folder stuff go? That's in here now. Oh, man. Is this more buggy than before? How did my fix not make things worse? Fix delete single file not updating folder. Yeah, that's exactly the thing I think I just missed. Update directory and put that there. Okay, I'm going to add that fix, but let's just keep going into what the heck did I refactor here? Yeah, so it tries to do the delete. If that fails, because it was a directory, then it reads the directory, does the promises like before. What's this delete false? Oh, update path. Ah, okay. Oh, before it was doing too much updating. Right, it would have been update. No, it would have only updated at the end here, wouldn't it? Oh, maybe not, because delete file runs again. It's another directory. It updates that directory. Okay, yeah. We don't need to update subdirectories. So now it's not doing that. Now it reads the directory and says for all of these, you're never going to update path. Right. And yeah, and then at the end, it deletes the directory. And if there's no error, then it tries to update the folder. If this was true, which is only going to happen on the first run. The first run, it's true, but then I'm passing false in subsequent runs. So only at the end and only on the main directory. But as I can see here, yeah, if it unlinks and then just goes to resolve, it never ran update. So that is that other little patch that we're just going to apply. EAF. Okay. We'll apply this one little improvement to it. And then I think we might have a better version of delete, which is the goal. So let's look at it here. It'll be the same changes because I'm applying more changes. Yeah, so that was just that one piece I missed. So then update directory here. There we go. This looks closer to how it looked before, honestly. But the promise doesn't have to be on the outward piece here. I think that's the case, yeah. Yeah, not too much changed, honestly. I didn't save base name. I'm only using it once, I guess, or there's just no point in saving it. I just don't care to save it. No, yeah, I'm only using it once now. Maybe before I was only using... No, I was using it twice before. Yeah, so there's no point in checking this either. That's just a waste of time because that's only happening on subdirect. Yeah, a subdirectory wouldn't know this. So when delete file passes a subdirectory, it's not going to be in the files array. That's why on every loop, I need to once again check, do a delete to get the proper stats, to get a proper fail message. Don't try to check, is it a directory? So I'm not sure why my test showed that as working, but this actually is a much better version of delete. And it actually isn't a huge change, honestly. This almost doesn't matter. I don't care. RM directory. Wait, what happened to update path? Oh yeah, it's up here now. Yeah, let's not worry about if the remove directory fails. Just try to update the darn thing. Let's not waste our time looking at crap. And in that case, could I make this a lot easier? Yeah. There we go. That's cleaner. Remove directory, update directory. And if it's got update path, it'll update the old folder. So let's just try and make sure we haven't broken it. We'll do two things at once here. We're going to make a new folder, and we're going to do a copy too. We're going to try to do just like we did last time to see if that same bug happens. Hopefully not. There we go. So I refresh that. Copy, paste, right? There's the copy worked. And now I press delete. Nice, and only one folder deleted. I refresh. It fully deleted. I delete this one, delete, refresh, fully deleted. Okay. So there we go. Now we have proper recursive delete and copy. Recursive delete fixed. Double fixed because I just did a future commit too. I did two commits. Recursive delete fixed. Even though, oops, let me switch back to the code, darn it. Here we go. So yeah, I'm just going to commit that. Done. Save. And what time are we at now? An hour and 3 minutes. Nice. First hour down. How many commits have we done here? It says we've done 14. 15 because I skipped one. And we had 42, so we're less than halfway through. Oh yeah, some of these are going to be skipped, luckily. Upgrade to React 18, that didn't work out. We're not doing that. No. Don't worry about that one. Package updates. I don't need to do more of those. I just did those. Stick to the non-alphas. This is me switching out of React because it was a failure, I think. Keep next canary. I had to keep a next canary. Good, so we just skipped all of those. Memo-wise, icons for folders. Ah, yes, this was something I noticed. this was running every time the right-click menus needed to generate. It would go check for this icon, but this is really a one-time thing. So I'm going to change this, but I'm actually not going to use this because I actually didn't like this either. I think I end up changing it yet again, and we'll just jump right to that. So let's just find it. It's called icons. Yeah, here we go. Get extension icons only once. That's the same thing I was trying to do here. But the simple version is just this. Let's just apply those right at this point. So let's go find it first in the code. Here it is. And I'm going to copy those declarations. We're going to put those right at the top here outside. So it's going to run these every time on load, one time, versus running it a bunch of times. This was going to happen anyways. This hook happens on load, so it's not a big difference to do this. There we go. That's a little more simple. We don't need use Memo. We don't need these to be Memoized. Let's just one time run them right here. And then every time they're needed, just grab them from there. In general, I'm hoping in the future to do a lot more efficiency optimizations, but I haven't caught all of them. I do them as I see them. Get extension icons only once. Yes. There we go. We just went through like 6 commits because a bunch of them weren't useful either. So we did those two. Let's go on to this one here. Use process icon for singleton. Yeah, that's a nice little change. So for, what was the issue with that? That was like, let's say for WebAmp here, if I were to open up a WebAmp skin, you see the WebAmp is opening with the icon being the little WebAmp file extension. But I want WebAmp to always open with this icon. And WebAmp happens to be the singleton instance. So I've decided to use that logic to consider this thing. Sorry, let me just paste it here. Oh, I'm flipping all over the place. I just saved the patch on my desktop here, which is a partial excuse for my gibberish, but I just want to apply it so I can remember what I was trying to, the point I was trying to get across. Yes, so I say if it's a singleton process, I'm calling it, then use the process icon, otherwise use the normal icon. And I've also decided to switch from using processes ID to actually extracting out the process. And the idea of the singleton is just that I only ever want there to be one instance of WebAmp running. So you can't launch another instance of it. If we go to the directory here, you'll see it's the only one that's true is the WebAmp app. There's no other singleton apps. So you can have 2 video players, 2 B86s, 2 of all of those, but not WebAmp. It just explodes. And at the same time, just like with Windows, you don't run 2 WebAmps on Windows typically. And is that an ideal place to put this icon fix? I'm not sure. I think it probably makes sense. I would never want a file extension icon on something on the singleton idea, I don't think. Let's not overthink it. Let's commit it. Done. Let's move on. So the use INI icon for shortcuts when possible. Yes. I add one here for public. The issue here, so let's open up public. No, is it public? Which one is it? Oh, it's the desktop, I think. So users. Here, you see this public icon is not showing like this one. So this public folder doesn't have a desktop INI file yet. That's part of what I do here. I say all of them, including the one in public folder, should be exempt from ignored. And then I supply it here in the public folder. And I also add if the process is opened by File Explorer, then try to read the icon. What is this for? For the file entry. Oh, is this for the shortcuts? Let's try that. So if I make a shortcut of public. Wait, this is a shortcut. Let's make one of a good example. Here we go, documents. So if I make a shortcut of documents, yeah, it doesn't have the same icon that I would expect it to have. So that's what this is doing. Is saying if you make a shortcut and it's to a folder, let's try to see if that folder has its own special icon. And then at the same time, I added one for public. So let's just take a peek at that. I did a double commit. Uh-oh. What's a double commit? It's when you slip in something else. Happens all the time. Let's take a peek at the changes. Let's just jump right to the changes. So now if I open my PC and users, you'll see it didn't work because I need to run the fs command again. Yarn build fs. Update the file system with that new file. Now when I refresh, it'll know about it. There we go. So now this one's got its own custom one. And if I go create shortcut, there we go. That inherits the other icon. That's the way I wanted that. Icon logic. It's so fun. It's fun for the whole family. Commit that one. Next up, fix delete single file. I already did that. We already did that. That was the one we already applied. Replace invalid characters on rename. This was a simple enough one. So when I'm doing renames, some characters are invalid. In Windows, if you do that and you just start typing gibberish, at some point it'll pop up a tooltip and say, you can't do these characters. So I basically just took that list and just made my own list. That's this regex here that I made. I have some VS Code extension that really helped. I did like a really inefficient regex that was like, or, and then the character, or, and then the character, or, and then the character, in some like really ugly looking way. And it just made this nice little simple string, which basically says any of these characters. This one here is escaped. So one backslash, or quotes, or an asterisk, or a forward slash, or a semicolon, or either arrow, or a question mark, or the line one. Any of those are invalid. And I basically just replace them. I don't even warn the user. I just say, you know what? No. And if it ends up that there's none, if you replace everything and the string becomes empty, then in that case, I don't even write the file. So it basically limits the ability for them to mess that up, myself included. Let's test it out. Let's switch over to the thing and name one here. So hello, arrows, gibberish, and press enter. And there we go. It saved some of the gibberish, but not the ones that are considered invalid. And this thing seems to be okay with that anyways. Like if I open Monaco here and drag this thing on, yeah, it still works as a file. It's okay with all that gibberish. I think even some of these are okay for my file system. Like I think question mark it probably could have accepted, and asterisk. Maybe backslash it would have had trouble with. Forward slash it would have, because I use that logic in other places. So this is a nice way to filter that stuff out and to make it more consistent with Windows. I mean, Windows warns you, but I'm not sure if the warning, I don't know, warning or just filtering it. Neither's ideal, honestly. Maybe the warning's better. We'll think about adding that. I'm happy with the filter approach for now. So we'll commit that. Move on to the next one, which is get extension icons only once. I already did that one too, actually. Right, I copied that one. And the fix delete single file, not updating folder. Yeah, I did that one too. So now I've done all of those for the 29th. What do we got here? We got the 30th, the 1st, and the 2nd. Yeah, we don't have that many commits. We got 3 days worth of commits left. Open with Monaco for unknown files. Yeah. So I basically want any file to be able, if you go right now, you see this unknown file. If I right click this, it doesn't have any way to open it in Monaco. But if I open Monaco and then drag it on, it opens. So Monaco, I want to be able to load them. And that's why I did this change here. Let's take a peek at it. I ended up doing a lot of changes to the right click menu this episode, I think. Just in general, I did a lot of system changes this episode. I don't know if it's noticeable, but it's been a lot of system refactoring this episode. And we will continue in that vein. Let's take a peek at what this one is. So now, before I was saying, if it found a process, then you add the open with thing. And now I'm saying, no, don't even worry about a process. Either way, you create the separator, and then we're going to add the open with. Yeah, it was already doing this. So open with is going to be added to every single icon. But the open with filtered is going to have been empty if there was no process. So if there was no process, or no, sorry, yeah. Yeah. I guess one of these could happen and not the other, perhaps. I don't know. But let's say there was no process and there's nothing to open it with. Then just put Monaco in there in its place for now. That's the basics of it. And I moved this if PID condition down a bit further. Before it was covering this whole thing. Let's take a peek at it just to make sure it worked. So now when I right click this, now we have open with and I can say Monaco and just open it directly. I think that's nicer for now. In the future, I might filter out the ability for binary files to be open that way because they're going to look like gibberish. But at the same time, if somebody wants to do it, I don't care. If you want to open up a binary file and look at gibberish, go for it. I'm going to have a hex editor at some point, so I might just default the binaries to the hex editor. Actually, that being said, I don't think I have it noted. I had it in my head, but make a note for next stream to note that I want a hex editor. I want a hex editor. Update package updates? We don't need to do those. Boy, I kept doing package updates for some reason. I don't know why. I think I was testing something before. Min-max close icons. I'm proud of this one. So I added the min-max close icons for when you open a window and you right-click here. I didn't have the icons here, so I want to add them. Let's add them right here. So this is one patch. And I actually forgot on the first commit here to add the restore ones. And I think I did that right in the next one. Yeah, add restore and also a disabled state. Oops. I look just like my picture today. I realize I'm wearing all the same stuff, I think. Funny. So let's get both these patches and just do them both at once. Because there's actually 4 icons. Minimize, maximize, close, and restore. And we're going to do them all. Jump to the code here. I'm going to look at my patch files. I got 2 of them. I'm going to apply them both. First one is like an F9-ish one. And the next one is like a D3 one. There we go. Those applied without any issue. I'm going to try to merge these commit messages. Min, max, close, restore, / disabled icons. And if we look at the icons, they're very tiny. It's the little X there, a little maximize disabled, a little minimize disabled, a restore disabled, and a little restore. Now, the reason I made these into PNGs, these are all very small, by the way. I've made them very efficient. So, like, how big are these? I want to confirm now, just to know. I'm going to look here. I'm doing this on the side in my Explorer window, but I just want to peek them. So, close, max, min, max, restore. What is this? 6 icons? Yeah, 6 icons. Let me check the properties of all 6 of these. 654 bytes total. So less than 1 kilobyte. About half a kilobyte for these 6 icons. So no big deal there. And the reason I use them is they have a very subtle gradient that I liked. But I ended up kind of whittling them down in MS Paint. Let's take a peek at them anyways. So there we go. So those icons look pretty darn close to the ones. And if you maximize, now you see that max is... Wait a minute. Maximize _ disabled not found? Oh, I wonder if I already had this wrong from before. Did I fix this? This is spelt wrong. Huh. I don't know if I ever fixed this. No. Good. Well, we found a bug. So these 2 commits, I made a slight mistake here. But how? Minimize, maximize, close. And this one's also called maximize _ disable. Oh, but I called the file maximized with a D. How did I not catch that last time? That's weird. All right, let's rename this. So I just renamed it to maximize. We'll refresh. There we go. Yeah, now it's there without any problem. I don't know if that was happening before and I just didn't test that. That's wild. Just, I mean, it's so minor, but just this little thing slip by. Okay, so now this is right. Yeah. Minimize, maximize underscore disabled, restore underscore disabled, close. Cool. And I just simply pointed them here. Very simply strings. Maximize, then underscore disabled to the maximize. And if it's not maximized, then disable the restore. Great. Better than last time, because I actually tested it on air. Hard to believe I never tested that. Well, it's not hard to believe, but I missed it. All right, we're into the Octobers already. October 1st. Fix selection on context and copy absolute entries. What the heck does that mean? So I just generalized base name here. That's simple. Here. I think I ended up changing this again. Like so many things I changed more than once, but the issue here, so let's say I click one item and then I right click this. You see how, wait a minute. What was the issue again? So let's say I select 3 items, but then I right click on Calibri. You see how these 2 deselected. It's not correct because they're actually still selected. So if I press copy and then I go paste, you see it actually did all 3 and that's what I wanted. But that's not the way I had it right now because it just, it was blurring. Blurring when I clicked anything was the logic I had. So let's apply that patch right now. Because I'm addicted to applying patches. Oh, I jumped to the wrong thing. I was at the code when I wanted to be there. Here we go. So yeah, I moved base name up. I got is focused entry. I basically just added these checks that were probably happening already down below. No. No, not really. Okay. So if the focused entries has the current name, then that means it's... What does that mean? What does that get us? Yes. So when I right click on a menu now, so let's say I have 3 icons selected and then I right click on one of the icons. If it's not focused, then blur the others. So if I have 3 and then I click a different one, okay, clear the others then. Otherwise, don't do that. So that should make a difference. So now when I select these 3 and I click Calibri, there we go. They all stay selected. So it's very obvious they're selected there. That's the more correct behavior. And that's pretty much all that changed. Here in absolute entries, I've attempted to make this more clear that it would go to the right one. I think that was another problem happening. Let's test that out. Well, now it's not going to happen because I just changed it. I think the issue was like if I clicked this and then I right clicked here and I pressed copy, it was considering both of these focused. So if on the next click you right click to go to copy, it was failing. So that's where I check here to say if the thing that was clicked wasn't a focused entry, the thing that, so like the other thing was the focused entry in that case. So if it's not a focused entry, treat the one that you just clicked as the only entry. That's the idea there. So that's a simple enough one. Like I said, I think I improve on it further, so let's just keep going. Don't focus if already focused on right click. Right, so in the same way that I said don't blur, also you don't need to focus because it was already focused. That was a simple one. I probably could have just done those together. I've lost track of where it was now. Here it is. So we'll just change this to that now. I think that's for the better. I hope I don't end up changing that on you guys. That would be unfortunate. I apologize if that's the case, but let's commit that. Simple enough. The idea makes sense. Don't need to focus on something already focused. Allow creating multiple shortcuts. This is a nice one. This is something I noticed Windows does. If you select multiple and press create shortcut, it'll create multiple shortcuts. That's something I wasn't doing before. So now when I press create shortcut, it'll go through all the selected entries and for each one make a shortcut instead of just making a shortcut for the selected one. In general, I try to use these absolute entries more. So everything that's selected basically. I probably should reword that to be like focused entries. Yeah, it's not the best name, but I think I also maybe adjust the path. I don't know. Anyways, let's tweak this one too. This is in the use file context, which is what happens, which is where when you right click items. So where's create shortcut? Somewhere in here. I got a lot of right click menus. I need to clean this up a little bit. The code in general is starting to feel like that, unfortunately, is that there's a lot going on, you know, a lot of stuff going on with the code. Okay, that one's a minor change. Let's test it out. Let's clear out this, restart. These happen to be shortcuts. These two here, right click and press create shortcut. There we go. Now we got two shortcuts to those two files there. Nice. Allow creating multiple shortcuts. Done. Next up. Allow creating shortcuts from shortcuts. Right, that's fair. Looks like I made the code more complex to do that. So let's see what happened. Sometimes to do something easy, you have to do something complex. Nike. No, I don't think that would be a Nike slogan. They just want you to do it. Just do it. Okay. So what did I change here? What did I do now? Let's look at this one. I want to look at simple changes. These are easier to grok. So this didn't change at all. I moved path extension up. Right, so when a new shortcut's made, if it's already a shortcut, I just read the shortcut and then make another one. Basically copy file. Couldn't I just... Do I have copy file? Is that a command? Copy files. Yeah, it's not really the same thing. Okay, fair enough. It's simple here. Read it, write it. Okay, it's 2 lines. So that's simple enough, honestly. Instead of doing anything, I think at one point when I was writing this, I was like, I'll reread the shortcut and then I'll remake a new shortcut. And then I was like, well, if it's a shortcut, I could just copy it. So I basically just copied and give it a new name. Let's test it out. Here's a shortcut, right click, create shortcut. There we go. Just created another shortcut. Simple. What's this other piece here? This was, so now on, I can right click shortcuts as well. Before I was saying if it's not a shortcut, allow the create shortcut. Now it's just always make it. This in general, I'm trying to get rid of all these restrictions, you know. If not this, if not that. In this episode, I get rid of a lot of these so that the right click menus are much more universal to all files. It's just better that way. It's actually easier to work with that way in the end. Here's another one. Allow creating shortcuts. No, that's what I already did. Yeah. Here we go. Allow creating shortcuts from folder shortcuts. I guess that wasn't correct. Oh, yeah, because there's... Wait, why wasn't that working? Oh, it must have just been something in the right click here. Don't I change this again? Allow creating shortcuts from folder shortcuts. A lot of minor changes. Well, that's good. They're minor changes. Let's apply this one. Simple enough. Let's take a peek at what it was. Let's go find the original line, which is, of course, in the same file we've just changed 14 times. So it was right here on create shortcut. Oh, I think it just wasn't showing for folders. Let's double check that. Yeah, I was like, if there's no path extension and there's no URL extension, but I now want to say there's no path extension or it's a shortcut. Let's double check if that's correct. So if I go to the browser and this is a shortcut to a folder. I right click it. Yeah, there's no create shortcut button. Now if I replace that condition with that one little extra piece. And now when I right click the shortcut, there we go. I can create shortcut. So I can create another one. And as you see, this is not one of those system shortcuts, so it gets another icon. Although maybe in the long run, it would be considered a system shortcut, actually, because I'm going to change the way the system shortcuts work very shortly. Okay. Less restrictions. Nice. Allow creating shortcuts from folders. Next up is... Wait, did I add that to the show notes or not? I forgot if I did. I did not. Dun, dun, dun. Next is use PID icon always. Yeah, I think for some reason... What was the scenario where I wasn't? Let's check here. So if I open this shortcut... Wait, is it not working? Oh, what was happening there? That was weird. Looked like it didn't quite open right. So as far as this PID icon change, I'd love to know what the problem was here. Oh, this is in regards to the right click. Right. So if I right click here, see this open shows it. But for most folders, when you right click, the open wasn't showing a little folder icon. Because those aren't shortcuts. Those were just like pure directories. I don't know the reasoning. I don't recall the reasoning by why I had this open shortcut idea. But I think we're just going to get rid of it. And we're just going to, under no condition do we use open shortcut. We just use PID icon always. I don't recall the reasoning why not. Use PID icon always until further notice. Further notice being when I remember the like, oh, right, that's why I needed open icon. But we're not there yet. So now when we right click a folder, you see we got a little folder icon there. I prefer that. I think the reasoning behind why I did it that way is that in Windows, folder icons... Wait, isn't it for all icons with Windows, though? Yeah, I don't know the reasoning, honestly. Until further notice, it's not happening anymore. Moving on. Allow downloading and zipping shortcuts. Sure. Again, this is some more simple changes. Let's take a peek at the changes because it's in a few places. We're going to do a patch file once again. Once again, as predicted, left my patch files open. And I'll stop singing right now. Sorry. Wasn't a popular song. Or was it? I don't even remember, honestly. So what have I added here? So I slightly refactored this a little bit. Right, the path extension is irrelevant. So if it's a default process, or if it's a shortcut, or if it's a path extension, or if there's no path extension and no URL extension. Yeah, this is a little cleaner the way those conditions are. This like double bracketing here, I don't know why I linked these two together. There might be some reasoning behind it. And then here I've gotten rid of the is shortcut piece. So before, if not is shortcut, sorry. Before for shortcuts, you wouldn't have the extract here, or the add to archive, or the download. Now, if you have a shortcut of a zip file, it'll probably show extract here. If you have, otherwise, you can add a shortcut to a zip file, or you can download a shortcut. It's not necessarily useful to do that, but you can do it. And here I've gotten rid of that rule that when it's making the zip files, before when it found a shortcut, it just wouldn't add it. Now I say, don't worry about that. So I just got rid of this entire condition here. We'll test it out. Let's test it out. Here's one. Add to archive. There we go. And it made an archive of it. Where if I click download, there we go. It tries to download a .url file, which I don't need it. Not going to do it. But we have the feature now. We have the technology. I was so obsessed about whether I could do it, I never asked if I should do it. And then I did it. Better rename resize logic for height. Okay, fair. What's the problem? Rename resize logic. Oh, right. This episode, I cleaned this up almost completely. So first off, right now, if let's find a long named file. This is a long name. So when I click rename, that's getting better, but at 3 lines is not correct. So I think I had this so that it would do calculations. You see there, it went to 4. Like backspace, it goes to 3. That's wrong, because at 3 lines, you can't even see. We have to scroll to see the rest, but it doesn't show it because there's no scroll bars. And same thing here. This ends quicker than it needs to. So I'm going to fix that too, so that the ... happens only when it needs to. Before, right now, it's like at 15 characters, just do ... But we can do better. We can and we will do better. And I think I do it over a couple iterative steps, as is usual. I think, in fact, I might get a little confusing this time, because I think I delete something and then I add it back. Which is always a rough one. Oops, editor. Editor, let's say better instead. So better rename resize logic for height. Let's take a peek at what I did. So I got rid of all of these functions. These are the ones I think that I end up bringing back. So for a little bit of the commit, I thought, you know, I'm done with this idea of measuring the text. It's not working. And it's actually true. I think for rename, I think I get rid of measuring text for now. But for text truncation, I bring it back. For when I'm not renaming, just to show it, I do need to measure the text to get it just right for now. So let's not worry, but I deleted this for now. I bring it back. And so you see the rename box I made way more simple. Before it was doing all this stuff where it was getting the lines and then passing font and stuff. For now, I've gotten rid of that. And basically what I found out, a cool little trick that I found for doing the text area, is if you set the height to just 1, and then you set and when you, let's say the height's 100, and there's only 3 lines, then the scroll height is probably only going to be those 3 lines. Or perhaps it's going to be the entire height, so it'd be like 100. But if you keep typing, eventually the scroll height will go further than the height. Now, the problem with that is when you start to delete lines, the scroll height doesn't readjust. It stays at whatever the new height is. So that's where I shrink it to 1 pixel every time. And then as soon as it's small, the scroll height goes to exactly the height of the text that's needed. So then I take that and I add 2 because I noticed that there seems to be like a 1 pixel line on top and bottom that you just can't get rid of. And at the same time, I don't care to get rid of them. I think it might even just be the line for the text box, like for the container, sorry. Anyways, long story short, this resets the height and then rereads scroll height properly every time. I only trigger it now on key up instead of key down. And I made the function more generic, that it checks the element at the start so that I don't have to do any element checking here. So now I'm no longer checking for the target here. I'm no longer passing the letter on key down. Basically just on key up. So let's take a peek now. That is much more simplified. And if you see here now when I do rename, it perfectly fits. And as soon as I get to the right amount of lines, boom, it fits. So you see that's a much cleaner way. There is that little twitch for a second where you see it go small. I don't know if I was able to avoid that, to be honest. But in general, the height is now perfect, and that's pretty much how it looks on Windows, which is the big saying that I do all the time in this stream, it seems. And the only other thing that changed, the z-index, yes, because I was noticing the rename box, if I typed too much, it would go under the next icon below it. I want it to go over top. So those were the 3, that was the basic little refactor to start with for the rename piece. But if you remember, we just removed all that truncate logic and all the measuring of text size. So let's see if we can bring that back in another form. Let me copy this to find out where it was. It was right here. So now I add the better truncate logic. I think I pretty much just bring back the logic I just took out. Yeah, this is what I took out before, so nothing changes there. This is one piece that changed, I think. I added that so that if you don't pass a max width, it just gives you that first measured length of the entire text. That being said, I don't think I need this. I think it was just handy. I think I just like that idea of that. Let's patch this one and see what it looks like. I was pretty happy with this truncate logic because it gets pretty close, and I've been trying to make it perfect, you know, as close as possible for a long time. So I'm happy that this truncate logic is finally looking decent. Now, it's not the most efficient use of JavaScript and CSS and all that stuff. Well, actually, it doesn't use much CSS anymore. So that's where it kind of loses some efficiency, I think. So this we just brought back. This is a way of measuring text by using a canvas and knowing what the font size is. And by doing that, I can know how many lines it's going to be. So that's where I use this function right here under truncate name. Before it was just saying 15 text, then we truncate. Now what I do is I run that command that gets the lines. So it takes the text, the font size, the font type, and the maximum width of the container that it's in. And based on that, it tells you how many lines it's going to take. If it's more than 2 lines, what I do is I take the first 2 lines from the array, I put them together, and then I remove the last 3 characters and I add ... If it's only 2 lines, I just dump it as is. So that was the basics of it, honestly. That's all that was needed. I had to get the font sizes so that I could pass it to truncate so that it knew that. And if you see down here, that's all I changed here. Is it's truncate now, and it passes all this information. And I had to set this max text display length, as you see here, to 68. The reasoning behind setting this to 68, I decided not to do math here, but the basics of it is, this is the width of the entry, 74. It's got, where's it got for padding? It's got some padding somewhere here. The rename padding. Is that it though? No. Somewhere here it's got like a 2-pixel padding. Let's just inspect the darn thing so I can get a concept for it. Oh, it hates that. What happened? I think that it just needs a little bit of a refresh. That happens sometimes when it gets silly. Trying to find that 2 pixels in here. Okay, let's just go look at the elements now. So if we look at a text piece here, so you see in the fig caption, that's 70 pixels wide. That's based on the fact that here's the LI item that's 74. Oh, you can't really see this piece here. So yeah, this is the 74 pixel wide one that we saw. And if you see here, it's got 2 padding. So the padding's on the left and the right. So that turns a 74 into a 70. Because you minus 2 on the left, minus 2 on the right. And then the other 2 pixels, I think, were just the box itself has this 1-line radius that I couldn't quite remove. And at the same time, I didn't feel necessary to remove. So that's the basics of it. Yeah, so now if we look at the truncate logic here, you see it's much cleaner. It's new rich text docu ... It's pretty much right to the edge. And it's pretty close to how it is in Windows now. It's almost pixel perfect, but it's not. It's a few pixels off, my version. And I do think long term, I'm gonna start doing iterative passes where I pixel compare everything and make sure, because this train's been moving, you know, and I'm getting stuff right and I'm getting stuff wrong. It's a learning process, but it's moving in the right direction. Anyways, there's the better truncate logic. So I don't see myself changing that again. I'm pretty happy with it now. The rename still needs some work now because now I've got better height. I've lost the width. And I tried fixing the width one and it made things worse. So I've got on the board as a note to get the rename width. I think I do. I'll make a note of it again because I don't remember. Rename width is not auto resizing. Make a note of that because I don't know if I have it on the board, but I think I do. Better truncate logic's done. So we've only got a couple left, actually. Nice. We're making pretty decent progress. So recursive zip, that's another one. If you see here, we got a new folder, and then in there we make a file. I think even this fails, and we'll make a file out here. So these two, let's say, add to zip. It made a zip. Yeah, you see it didn't add the folder. So that's what we intend to fix here with our zip recursive. And it's, I think, in the same vein as some of the other recursive stuff we've been doing this episode. We did being able to copy recursively. We did being able to delete recursively. So today's the recursion episode, I guess. Recursion being the fact that the function calls itself with different parameters. And there's some risks to recursion from a memory stack point of view. But it's not really relevant in this file structure. You'd have to have quite the nested file structure to make any difference here. Probably wouldn't be worth your time. It's not going to come up in my tests, I don't think. But if you were making a legitimate OS, then all of these things would, of course, be legitimate concerns. But I'm going to say, hey, let's say that they can only make 1,000 folders. They probably can make more than that, but maybe on Windows you can make more than 1,000 folders. I don't know. Who cares? So here I've filtered out things again to allow more things to work. So now a folder can be add to archive. Before I wasn't allowing you folders to be add to archive, but now you can add those to archives as well, or download them, and it'll create a zip of them. We'll test that. And then here is where I made, here was the big trick, I think. Before we look at that one. So I switched file to be called a zip file, because this little file concept was only being used for the zipping thing, so I kind of just tweaked its name. So for get file here, the main function, it used to be more complex. It used to check directory and then do resolve. Now get file just goes straight to getting the file. So get file, read the file, resolve the file. And it gets the relative path here. And the idea being that I've stopped checking for directories because I now filter out all directories. So now when the user says download files and they have these paths, that's a list of, like, let's say that new folder that was on the desktop plus a file. I run this through this command called find paths recursive, where it takes, if it finds any folders in that list of paths, it just goes through those and finds all those files and finds any files in there. And it gives you back a big list that's only files, no more folders. And that's where this thing can get the files then, like it was doing before. So this function doesn't change too much. It just gets the same path like before. And does any of this change? I don't think so. Yeah, none of this changed, the making of the zip file. Just the fact that the paths had more file names in it. And then also this relative piece, because now that the file can be like new folder / blah, 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 whatever. I had to make it relative. So take the path minus the directory basically to get the relative path of it. And luckily the zip tool, the zip library that I had already works that way. Where if you go like file, new folder / file, it'll make the new folder. So all I really had to do was take the paths that I already had and turn it into a list of paths that didn't have any folders in it but had any nested files listed. That's the idea. And then here's the main function for how I did it. Let's take a peek at that. So find paths recursive. It takes the path list, and then I have the fs module so I can access file functions. It returns a promise all, where it goes through all the paths and maps those. It's quite a lot of recursion promises here. It looks a little confusing. The main piece here, though, so it goes through the paths, and each one it makes a promise where it looks at the stats of the file. And if it's a directory, or let's skip this for a second and go right to the simpler one. If it's not a directory, then it says, here you go, here's a path. And it returns an array of that one file. And it resolves that. So that's going to get put in as one resolved path that there was a file. But whenever it finds a directory, it reads that directory and does the loop again, where it resolves, same as before, but it resolves based on another call to the find paths recursive again. Where it takes the new files that it found in the new directory and says find these paths too. So that's going to give you, this whole thing gives you a big list of arrays of a big array of arrays of files basically at the end. And then what I do with that, after it's looped through all of these, I get all the new paths and then I flatten the array. So all the arrays of arrays become one big array of just strings of all these different paths. And long story short, that turns, so let's say you start with just a path called new folder. Well, it's going to take that, it's going to look in new folder, it's going to find a file, and then that'll be the new list. You'll go in another folder, find another 2 files, put those in the list. Basically just going through the folders and finding all the files. And that's it. So let's test that one out. So we got the new folder and it's nested. Let's make it even more nested. Put a new folder in there with another file. And in there we'll put another folder, another file. Close these all. We'll pick these 2, right click and press add to archive. And now when we go in it, there we go. We have the nested one and a nested and another nested. So it's able to copy all those paths and get us the proper nested relative paths. And same if I were to delete these and just right click on the folder and say download. Oh wait, I wanted to add to archive, sorry. Add to archive. Now when I look at it, there we go. And it's got all its nested structure in it. So now we have a way that users can download those things in zip format or whatever they want to do. And that's it for that commit. That's zip recursive. We're almost done the episode here. What's next on the list here? We did zip recursive. We're at the last day. Today I did these, actually. Today's the 2nd, isn't it? Yeah. So the first one here was rename max text display width. Oh, yeah? I just wasn't happy with it, I guess. Yeah, it's more of a width, honestly. Length sounds like the length of all text, whereas it's just the width for the text. The text can be longer than 68 characters or something. Anyways, this is a really minor change, but at the same time, on my personal project, I need to change it, and I don't want to sneak it past you guys, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, where's max text display length? You know, I wrote that in my app, or I was following along. Where'd that go? So I don't want to, even the most minor change, I don't sneak past anybody here. We go through them here. We go through it, but quick. I went through it quick there. That was like 30 seconds for a PR. Oh, sorry, for a commit, not a PR. So here's where I completely redo system shortcuts. Actually, before we do that, we'll do that one last because it's the last complicated one. Let's do a few more simple ones here. So don't limit max scale. I noticed when I did a Lighthouse scan to see how efficient my site was, it started complaining about this max scale. Now I added that because in mobile, when I put the context menu and it went outside the viewport for a second, it was causing this weird effect. But I think it turned out that that had something to do with initial scale more so than the max scale. So I noticed that if I got rid of initial scale and max scale, the bug came back. But if I just had initial scale, it was okay. And that also meant Lighthouse was okay, because Lighthouse had a problem with this maximum scale part. Basically, it doesn't want me, for accessibility reasons, the user should be able to zoom in however they want. But this initial scale has to say that how it loads, that's the scale. I don't want you shrinking it anymore or doing something wonky to it. Let the user zoom in, but don't try to zoom out on me. So that was all that was actually needed there. It's a good thing I caught that, and it also puts my Lighthouse score back to a decent score. Maybe at the end of this episode we'll do a Lighthouse scan. Let's see if I can remember that. Make a note of it. Lighthouse. Let's see where that saves. Okay. So that's this change here. Very simple. Commit that one, put it up here. Got another simple change is the load Vanta, right? So this was something I noticed with the wallpaper. I'm going to copy a wallpaper here so I can show you it working. So if we go pictures, I'll copy my wallpaper here. And I'll set this as the wallpaper, and then we'll refresh the page. So you see the page loads and it's the wallpaper. But if we look at the head, you see it loaded the Vanta library. Totally a waste of time, useless, a waste of a download. Shouldn't have done it anyways. I want to fix that. I don't want it to load Vanta when I never needed it, obviously. I'm going to apply yet another patch. We got at least 2 more patches probably today. This one's CCC. That's a weird commit hash. CCC. There we go. This was the don't load Vanta libs if it's not needed. Let's see what changed here. So I do load this function here to reset the wallpaper. If we look at the use wallpaper hook, here, after the session's loaded, if there's an image, it tries to read it. But if there's not an image, it just goes straight to load wallpaper. But what load wallpaper does... Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Let me repeat this. So what matters is the image scenario. It loads an image. It's okay. This piece here, this is to reset Vanta. So let's say Vanta was already loaded, and then you want to load the picture. This will clear Vanta. Now, I wanted to maintain that functionality. So I still allow it to run, but now instead of before load files was the first thing that occurred. Now I took out this check here to get the current effect, and then I try to run destroy on the current effect for whenever this runs. Now if no element was passed to me, that's it. I just bail at this point. But if it's there, then I move on to where I load the files and I load the other stuff. So it's just a nice little efficiency thing for people that have loaded the wallpaper already. So now you see in the head here, it did not load it if it wasn't necessary. That was better. So that was that fix. And then we're on to the last improvement of the day. which is this system shortcut idea. And it's to get rid of the idea here of as I was, let me clear the wallpaper here for now. So let's say I rename this to meow. So you see that resorted it back down here. Now it's not a system shortcut. That's not what I want to happen. That's not cool. That's why we're going to switch to, wait, did I demo it or did you miss it? Let's just try it again in case I didn't demo it properly. So my PC, we switch it to be meow, and it no longer has a system shortcut. It's no longer in the right position. Not cool. That's what this one is here. System shortcuts and file data. I basically changed the whole idea of system shortcuts that we talked about before, but now you'll get to see how I changed it and why this way is, I would say, better. Well, actually, I don't know if my change will express that because maybe this way isn't better. But you know what? It's what I'm doing. So if you got a problem with it, please post it in the comments because that's totally fair and fine. And I appreciate the feedback. Let's take a look at what I did. So first thing is I took these two shortcuts and I added this thing called type system. So the two shortcuts I wanted to be system shortcuts now have this type field. Next thing I did is I removed that whole system shortcuts idea, hard-coded in. No more of that. It needs to be dynamic. It needs to be figured out from the files. In the function, I added that a shortcut can have this type field, and I've also added that the get shortcut info will attempt to get the type. And it'll attempt to return it, but it can be just completely blank. And I've also said in file info here, I think, if I look at file info, I've also said that type is part of it now. Now, I've said it's optional, but that's not completely true. I guess, I wonder if that's going to complain in other places. I'd be okay to say that it has to be blank here because I actually am passing blank. Let's just see if not putting optional makes it complain anywhere else. I don't think it will, but let's see. That was it for this. Oh yeah, now it's complaining in all these other places. So let's keep it optional. That's okay. Yeah, so for file info, this can continue to be optional because not all scenarios is a file going to be a shortcut. But when it's a shortcut, it is going to send a blank type unless it's a system shortcut. That's okay. Next step. So yeah, instead of doing system shortcut now we're getting the stats is this new idea of stats called file stat. And a file stat's pretty much just the same as it was before with a stat, but there's also this included feature of a system shortcut boolean. That was my way of kind of embedding the system shortcut idea in the file. So whether you rename it, you move it, it's a system shortcut. And now I don't pass it in, but I got it off the stats now. That's all that changed there. All that changed in here, file info, was that piece there, which we just looked at. Here's where I made that file stat type and called system shortcut. I also do the sorting here now within sort contents, which is where all sorting occurs. So now, but instead of before, I was like rebuilding the array and it just made a mess of it. Now I do the sorting properly here. So I say sort system shortcuts. It happens at the end here. After all other sortings occurred, I say, okay, sort out the system shortcuts at the end. And this, it's pretty simple. If both of them are system shortcuts, then just say a 0. If A is a system shortcut, then say -1 to move it up. Otherwise, 1 to move it down. I think that's how that works with sorting, and it worked. So that's how I did the sorting algorithm. I found it on Stack Overflow. We don't need to pass system shortcuts in anymore. We don't need to mess with this anymore. I only use file names once again, so I'm thinking of actually moving this back out too. Oh, I was actually using this several times. Maybe I should just, is that for files, which I only use? I can make this, I guess I will use this more. And let's reuse it in these two places as well. There we go. That's a little cleaner. Is there anywhere else that I can use this? I'm making the variable anyways. There we go. Slightly more efficient of the most minor degree. Okay, so that's pretty much like before. I have a question mark here in case this is empty. Well, if it's empty, it's still going to loop through it. I guess I don't even need the question mark, honestly. If there's no keys here, it would just be empty. So that's that. And for used folder, This is where I set the file stat, I believe. Yeah, here we go. So before we look at this, let's just see what changed. So when it initially gets the stats, I've had to change this to be an async function because now I await the possibility that I'm going to have to get more information from the files. That's the only change that occurred here, and it also occurred here. When the file... Wait, what is this scenario? This is... Why am I getting the stats here? Get files. Oh, okay. So the get files is when I get the... That's when I do a fresh update. Oh, okay. So this is the update files function that has 4 different scenarios. If there's an old and a new file, it's a move operation. If there's an old file, it's a delete operation. If there's just a new file, then it's been updated. And in that case, we re-get the stats. That's what's going on here. And then in the other case, it completely gets all the files again. And in that case, I use get files, and I've augmented that up above here to be just like this one, where instead of just directly accessing stats like it did before, now it does the stats with shortcut info, where it populates the stats with updated information if need be. Now what that function does is it goes through it looks at the file name and looks at its stats. It makes a new promise where it checks, is the file name a shortcut? If it is, it's going to do some stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to pass the stats back. So, hey, you know what? This isn't a shortcut. Just go on to the next one. Yeah. But if it is a shortcut, then it's going to read the file. It's going to read the file, and then it's going to update the stats. And that's what it's going to resolve. So the resolve here assigns the stats. I tried doing just like a ... stats, but it didn't copy the prototype as expected. So object assign worked better. This kept the stats in its pristine form, but was able to add this boolean to it of a system shortcut. And the basic idea for that is just get shortcut info of the shortcut file, check its type, and if its type equals system, then it's a system shortcut. And that's it. Long story long. So now if we clear out this from the... Oh, it had previous sort order that was wrong, so we got to completely nuke our settings here. In fact, I think Next.js might have hooped again for some weird reason. Yeah, it looks like it did. I don't know why that keeps happening. I guess it's with these patches. Sometimes these patches are like sneaking up on the next environment. Like, whoa, a bunch of stuff just changed. Okay, so there we go. So now we see we got system shortcuts here. They don't have the shortcut icon. They're in the right position, but if I were to rename it to say my computer, there we go. It stayed without a shortcut. It stayed in its position. That's what I want. And it treats itself as my PC here still. I've decided that actually makes sense in this case because the my PC is a special root folder that has that name. But if you were to do something here where you say like this public is called meow and I open that, that's still public because that's a shortcut to a folder called public. But there's no folder called my PC. So changing this to my computer, I wouldn't expect this to say my computer. My PC is like an internal idea, basically. Okay, system shortcuts in file data. You could argue that it's a little inefficient to like load files, reload things, looking inside contents. It's like, can't you just make an object and hard code all this? That's not the point of any of this. The point is for it to be dynamic and for it to be adjustable and for it to actually be doing the things you'd expect an OS to do almost. So if we're done the commits, I think we're done the commits for today. We just did those before. Yeah, that's it. So we just did all the commits for episode 40. Before we move on, I wanted to check Lighthouse and see how it's doing. So let's do a Lighthouse scan here. Let's close node. We do a yarn build, and then we do a yarn start. That will give us a fresh non-dev environment. Because when you just do yarn dev, you get the Next.js dev environment, which actually runs a lot of other stuff in the background of the actual client side. It's actually running Next.js stuff. But if you do a build and then you do start, it basically isn't. I hope. I don't think it is. Almost done my Red Bull too. We're only at 2 hours. I'm actually surprised I managed to get through all of it in such a short amount of time. So we do yarn start here. We go back to the browser. We're going to clear the cache. We're going to clear the application data. And I'm actually going to load my wallpaper again here so that we don't even have Vanta.js, because Vanta.js is one of the performant issues. We're going to start with it without that. So let's try that. So we're going to move to Lighthouse now. We'll do desktop. We're not going to worry about progressive web app because I don't have that set up right now, so we won't even test that. But everything else we'll test. Let's try it. Generate report. Let's see what we get. Come on. No whammies, no whammies. Oh, so close. So that's pretty good, right? When you consider the complexity of this app, that in Lighthouse, it almost gets 100% on everything. I've hit the accessibility, the best practices, the SEO stuff, what they wanted. Even in performance, they don't have a suggestion for me. They don't have any like, do this, do that. It's just like, well, you didn't get perfect. I mean, some of this stuff's absurd. I'm running this locally, though. You got to forgive a lot of that. Like this wallpaper alone. Although actually this wallpaper would never be, like someone would have to drag in their own wallpaper and then it would actually be locally stored in their browser. So it still would be fast. But let's try this again with Vanta and see what kind of unimprovements we get. So we'll close that and we'll do another one here while Vanta's running. I think Lighthouse doesn't quite understand the animated background, so sometimes it doesn't do as good. So 97%, so we get a 2% drop in our performance with Vanta. But when you actually look at the drawings of like when the visuals happened here, within like the second frame, we already had pretty much the entire page loaded visually. And when they talk about here, like time, where's time to interactive? 0.4 seconds. Was it? It might have even been less. Like, watch, if I click refresh and I look at that, that was less than, I mean, maybe it wasn't less than 0.4, but what it's calling interactive is like its best judgment of what interactivity is on my site. But honestly, it's almost instant. So again, though, take it with a grain of salt because this is running local. But at least these three, best practice, accessibility, SEO, those have nothing to do with it running local. That's just because I've tried my best to follow most of the recommendations for how to set stuff and how to do certain things. But with that being said, I think we've done a lot this episode. We've done a lot of improvements. You look at it, it's coming together, you know, we got so many things that make sense about it. I just noticed another bug, darn it. So I click, well, actually, no, there is no bug there. Never mind. That's it. No more bugs. Everything's fixed. You tuned into another one. If you like this video, please throw me a like. If you want to subscribe, that would be much appreciated. It would motivate me. You'd keep track of what's going on. So please throw me a subscribe if you can. Other than that, yeah, thanks for tuning in. This was a quick one at only 2 hours. They used to be 3 hours, but nowadays a lot of them are 2 hours. Maybe because I'm doing these patches, they happen a bit faster. But hopefully I was able to explain the stuff to you. If you have any questions or comments about what you've seen, feel free to jump to different spots if you didn't check out the whole thing and tell me if something didn't make sense or if something you thought was cool. But anyways, that's about it for today. So thanks for tuning in. See you next week in Stream 41.